Gracias, and hello everyone. I noticed he shared with you my news of being a 6-time Ironman finisher. I was just reminding myself how my connected scale didn't recognize me when I stepped on it just 2 weeks ago. My scale thought I was a guest in my own household. So, connected fitness, there it is. Look, I take the stage with really equal measures of, humility and pride. Such a great cast or roster of speakers have shared how the world of sport is changing, the way I experience it as a fan, right? The way the teams I care so deeply about improve their performance, and the way I participate in sports. Rudy's taking care of logging my runs for me, and whenever I get to a new city, Map My Run or Map My Ride comes in great handy. So, but I'm proud and excited to also share with you some work that IBM did with a really epic, here it is, an epic sports performance challenge. And so what I'm going to do is share with you the insights from over 6,000 miles of ultra-endurance cycling, if you can imagine that, okay, in 2 races. The first race is the race across America in 2015, the second race, that same race in 2016. And then we'll look at kind of what this first-of-a-kind project leads us to believe about the future of the connected athlete, right? The future of sports performance. Can I have, just by show of hands, how many have ridden their bike this year since January 1? Okay, many of you. That's why I love you can relate to this. Maybe keep your hand up if you've ridden 10 kilometers, 20? How about 100? Okay, a couple down, 200? All right. Okay, I'm a 200K guy. That's the longest single effort I've ever made. But we're talking about an effort that's really otherworldly here. Race across America is 3,000 miles, or about 5,000 kilometers. And it's done in one nonstop bike race. So it's a proving ground of sorts for technology, and certainly for one particular athlete that I'll introduce momentarily. Okay, so without further ado, let me introduce you to the race across America. So imagine this. You start off racing your first day, and you put in 36 hours in the saddle, and then you take a 2-hour nap. And you'll race the next 22 out of every 24 hours until you get to Annapolis, Maryland. No roads are closed, there are no stages, there's no 200-person peloton protecting you from the wind, right? This race is 50% longer than the Tour de France, and yet the winner will complete the race in about a third of the time. It's quite a test. Along the way, you'll encounter all kinds of weather and road conditions. Remember, the roads aren't closed. Across one of the 3 deserts, you might encounter 120-degree temperatures on the tarmac, or one of the 4 mountain ranges, 30-degree Fahrenheit, sub-zero Celsius temperatures that you need to endure and plan for. By the time you're done, you will have climbed 170,000 feet of vertical, okay? That's halfway to space, if you're keeping track, 32 miles. That's 15 times the height of Mount Everest, and speaking of Mount Everest, that's only 4 times the height of Mount Everest, and 15 times as many people have actually stood on the roof of the earth on Everest than have completed and seen the finish line of this race. One adventurer that has done both called Everest more dangerous, but Ram more difficult. And each June, about 40 solo racers take on this race. And our racer is this guy, Dave Haase. He's pictured here at the finish line in 2015, so if there's a spoiler alert, he made it, okay? But let me tell you a little bit about Dave. When we met him, he was a 3-time top American finisher, had been on the podium a couple of times. And this was his 5th race across America in 2015. The last race he had competed in was fully 7 years prior, right, in 2008. And he was 47 years old, and that's old for an endurance cyclist. Much of the prime, the prime is in the late 30s and up to early 40s. But that's our racer, and as I said, a terrific outcome. He crossed all of America in 8 days, 20 hours, and finished 2nd, missing first place by just 12 hours. Okay, that was his fastest time ever by a full day, shaving a full day off his best time. It was the fastest time ever not to win the race, unfortunately, which fueled our effort in 2016. He also had something else on his side. I guess I would say a small but mighty team of IBMers and some technology that we were committed to put to use to see his fitness do the best he can in this race. And let me tell you about that. So, for starters, we had Dave completely wired. So all the usual metrics of power, of cadence, of speed, his biometrics of respiration or breathing rate, his heart rate, and his core temperature. One of the challenges of this race is that it is just so epic in effort, and it crosses such diverse terrain, as managing your metabolism and managing, right, those thresholds are really vital, and core temp sensing was something that we had to add to what we called the Internet of Dave, okay? In addition to these metrics that we were capturing off the bike and off the body of Dave, we also captured contextual information about the course, the weather conditions Dave would face, okay? We used the weather company, now an IBM business, which regularly, daily ingests about 400 terabytes of data and produces forecasts, hyperlocal forecasts for over 2.2 billion waypoints on planet Earth. It allows us, essentially, on a predetermined course like RAM, to see the future Dave would face and to plan accordingly. So Dave's crew not only had the real-time feedback, right, coming off from Dave and his machine, but it also had contextual information about the conditions Dave would face. And over the 3,000 miles, the team would actually use that information from the 25,000 waypoints, you can think of them as, to make better decisions about racing and resting and recovery. We can kind of think of it as creating our own luck. So I'd like to return to now some of our design goals and tell you a little bit more about how this mashup of technology about sensors, about data collection, about analytics and optimization, about weather, and how we put it to work. But I think I would really begin with what our design goals were, and that is to keep Dave safe, right? You can't win a race you can't finish. And the second thing was to get him there fast, to have him race his smartest race ever. And we're going to take these apart a little bit. So as I shared with you, when you're crossing deserts that have temperature on the tarmac of 120 degrees and you're putting forth a lot of watts, the greatest risk you're going to face is to cook your insides, essentially to succumb to some heat-related illness, whether it's heat exhaustion or heat stroke, possibly dehydration. These are all maladies that really will, of course, compromise the health, wellness of a racer and actually have them in the hospital before they get to day 2 or 3. So it's vital that we measure in real time Dave's core temperature. And so what you see pictured there, that purple pill, that is actual size. That's a joke. Sorry, it's smaller. It's about this big. His team would activate this core temp sensing pill. He would swallow it. It would stay in his digestive tract for about 12 to 24 hours, and it would provide a feedback to an iPad that was in the follow vehicle. They could give him real-time guidance in his earpiece, in his Bluetooth earpiece, about moderating his effort to keep that temperature below 102. Okay? The second thing the team would do is they would intervene. A common way for the crew to intervene might be to spray water for evaporative cooling to take effect, right, as the bike rider, racer goes down the road. A more creative solution that his team came up with was a sports bra packed with ice, keeping his core cool. Okay? That was technology, in quotes, that was used to help get Dave safely through the three deserts and onto Annapolis. So now that we have Dave safe, the next job we have to do is to model the outcome. The outcome we have is to get Dave to Annapolis as fast as we can. And it begins with having a physical model of the work that needs to get done. So here you see a picture, I think I got it from Google. It just describes how a bike works. You know, you're getting mechanical advantage. The watts and energy Dave puts into the pedals is converted into forward motion. And these are well described and defined things. 52, teeth on the big ring. It's going to move 52 links of chain over that smaller cog. The wheel's going to turn 4 times for every revolution. And you're 2.4 football fields, American football, down the road with every minute of effort. But it's really when you put that model into the context of the entire race. This is a profile of the course, okay? 3,000 miles of racing. You can probably see the coastal mountains of California. You can see the Continental Divide, the high point. You can see the Appalachian Mountains there, a final test. Some of the toughest climbs on the course are actually in that small little patch on the right. But we have to take that physical model of Dave's effort and put it in the context of this outcome. We needed to predict, for example, Dave's response to efforting up a hill. What power would he put into the pedals? What progress would he make? Right? So we had to model that physically. We had to also look at what would be the output or the yield. How many miles or what distance he would cover for that effort. I just want to talk a little bit about that challenge. So, back to this idea of forecasts. If you were one of those that raised your hand about bike riding, you know that tailwind is your greatest friend, right? How great is it to go for a bike ride and have that wind at your back, right? It's like effortless. Your speed picks up, your energy goes a lot farther, but that's not always the case. But what we're able to do, given the fact we've mapped the 62 miles of atmosphere between the ground and space, we got models that are interpreting, right, and assessing and sensing the dynamics. We're able to peer into the future for the location where Dave will be down the road, okay? It's essentially a way of looking at the future to see what the return for continuing to ride is, so we can map out when would be a good time to rest. Now, some roads are straight. This is actually Monument Valley. I snapped this with my iPhone this year on the course. It's a beautiful drive, a nice bike ride too, but a beautiful drive for the crew. While some roads look like this, others look like this one. This is actually shot in 2015 from my dash cam. We're coming down the coastal mountains of California into the low desert of the Sonoran Desert, okay? This is a part of the course called the glass elevator. And I'm using it because it's gorgeous, but I'm using it also to illustrate that the problem isn't just about the wind relative to north, south, east, or west. It's wind relative to the rider's direction on the road. So the math is more complicated, right? It's not the loop of a velodrome, consistent as it is. It actually looks like this. So our models had to constantly recalculate and anticipate the curves of the road from the GPS location waypoints that we were given to describe the course and the relative wind direction, okay? This is hard to stop watching, but we got more work to do. But this is a part of how the math, science come together to actually support Dave's best outcomes. So let me take you to the conclusion. Okay, so how did it help? So Dave's logbook shows that he stopped 7 times for a total of, get this, 14 hours in 8 days and 20 minutes. He pedaled the rest. And in those 7 stops, he each time referred to our optimization models to pick the perfect time to stop. The difference between the decision he made and the bad decisions he could have made as well saved him about 12 hours. And importantly, he didn't have to burn a calorie for it, right? He didn't have to effort at all. It was free. It was available to him because he had someone doing the arithmetic, taking into account the context, right, the weather, the terrain, and his physical model of performance on the field, right? I told you I would share a little bit about 2016, so I already told you what happened in 2015, second place. Well, we started that year, this year, with a better Internet of Dave 2.0, we called it, right? We were going to outthink second place. Guess what happened? We took second place. But it was a race, I say, like no other. Let me tell you a little bit about it. So Dave's as fit as he's ever been. We got the technology more dialed in June of 2016 than we ever have. And the start is actually milder in the deserts, early deserts, than it had ever been before. So we didn't really have that heat test. But something's off. We're leaving California into Arizona, then into Utah, and Dave's not feeling well. Well, it was Colorado where we've heard the first sign of the cough that you don't want to hear that's really deep in the lungs. And sure enough, while he's climbing the Continental Divide on the west side, right, up what we call Wolf Creek Pass, he described it as he felt like his radiator blew, right? He couldn't get enough oxygen, right? His breathing rate elevated, his heart rate elevated. It all showed up on our dashboards, but frankly, when Dave's standing next to his bike, you don't need a dashboard, right? We took him to the ER, the emergency room, and he spent 17 hours being treated with antibiotics, being treated with oxygen, and being treated with pizza. Pizza, yeah. They all helped. He returns to that point where he had stopped the race that previous day, 17 hours ago, and continues that morning to climb Wolf Creek Pass, the longest climb. And from there, if you remember the profile, it's all downhill. It's downhill, and then it's uphill, and it's downhill. But you know what I'm saying? He passed that test. And while he lost 17 hours about to the leaders, he would pass 9 people ahead of him to finish second, just 6 hours out of first place. It's really an amazing, amazing finish, and it taught us a couple of things. It made us wonder what would be possible, frankly, if we didn't have the challenges, health challenges. It made us think about maybe there's something more to recovery in the race. Maybe 2 hours isn't the right amount to bed down. Maybe it should be 4, right? And I think it also proved that, perhaps second place can be a legendary performance too, in a heroic performance. At least that's my take. So, look, when Dave returned from his 2015 race, he's from a small town in the Midwest. About 10% of the townspeople turned out, right, in the band shell. A radio personality asked him about his race, and he described it as racing his perfect race. And that's all we can ask for, right? Sports performance is getting the best out of yourself, right, on game day. It's about building great engines, but it's also about racing them intelligently. It's my conviction that these technologies, Internet of Things, contextual data, analytics, cloud, are all transformational when applied thoughtfully to sport. Now look, it's neat that we have a first of a kind, but it's really also our observation that it's going to become more commonplace. Last year, Munir Zak, the USOC, United States Olympic Committee Innovation Director, spoke about this example of USA Cycling. Our collaboration with them helped build a data and analytic platform to give feedback in an immediate way to help the women learn faster, to be coached more quickly. A very exciting outcome. We're seeing massive gains in sensor development. This is a picture of a sensor worn on the skin that will read the pH. It'll read hormone levels and other stress indicators in real time. Imagine what it can do to give feedback to physiologists, to coaches, and to athletes. You may have heard yesterday from my colleague from IBM about Orico's work, really combining sports science and data science, working on essentially the workload, the biometrics, the workload planning for training load, and also the readiness to perform. Couldn't be prouder of their work with Watson and their athletes to have great outcomes. Another IBM partner is in the position to help fans engage more deeply with the Tour de France, right? That iconic bike race. That's short, but iconic bike race. I can say that, right? In new ways, right? Data from the peloton, composition, like who's in the breakaway. That was hard to come by in the olden days. And I'll say the cadence and power and speed is new information that helps me engage differently with a favorite race of mine. And lastly, I'm going to end, almost end here. Really proud of the work to take what has been technology and ideas only for elite athletes and make them available to people like me. So Rudy's work is paying off. That happens to be my boss on your left, Ginny Rometty from IBM, and Kevin Plank from Under Armour. Look, here's my last word, honest. That's a picture from my 6th Ironman, and I use this picture to remind me of something. And it's really, by the way, it took place about 20 seconds before me. The person in that with a cheese head on his head is actually an 18-year-old I mentored to finish his first Ironman. And I'm leaving you with something, right? This technology, if mastered and married with purpose, can make a huge difference for the world we live in. Mentor someone. It can make a difference for you, and it will certainly make a difference for them. Okay? That's all I have for you. Thanks so much.